I think, Krystal, I mean, look at the Jones Act thing. You and I support American labor. You and I are I will call myself protectionist. I won't speak for you. But let the freaking foreign tankers move some crude oil temporarily, okay?
Yeah, that was an interesting one. I didn't know
occur to me. Yeah, the more I looked into shipping magnets, and so I'm like, oh, that's why the price of diesel is high here and not in Houston. Makes a lot of sense, actually, whenever you think about it. You could easily make it and still protect American labor in the short term, the long term, and keep the ships. The second one, whenever we're looking at exports, why are we exporting all this gas? And the more people I spoke to, the same answer. We live in a capitalist country because they can. And I'm like, yeah, okay, but they also get a lot of subsidies. And under the 1975 law, we declare oil a strategic asset, and we basically can control the entire price of oil by the president.
Well,
so
there is a third way that allows you to maintain the quote-unquote dream, as you put it, of rescuing the climate from complete climate disaster and crisis and, subjecting millions of people to famine and poverty and storms
You're
and
going to say national
disaster.
It's not going to happen. So, yeah.
Yes. that
but it's
really,
not going to happen. I'm saying this could actually happen today, like tomorrow.
But see, the problem with how you frame this, though, is you're like, listen, you got to just give up on this dream of, saving the planet from crisis. Focusing on the costs of today, which are brutal and important to consider because they're hitting working class people's budgets. But the science says you can't just say, too bad, we're not going to be able to, we're not going to be able to deal with this, so just give up everybody. And that's the issue I have. It's true. Nationalization is not going to happen. But it is the most elegant solution because you can ramp up the refinery capacity. You can end the exporting of oil for the temporary. You can increase the amount of gas flow right now and prepare to wind it down over the long term. I'm not ready to give up on the idea of mitigating the worst of the climate crisis. I'm also not ready to give up on the idea that the U.S. can engage in big national projects that could actually rise to the task of dealing with the challenges of today. So while I agree with your short-term assessment, it's the things you lay down are pretty inarguable, especially the Jones Act thing, and I think they're also very politically feasible. What we really need to do to make sure we're not in this situation again, both from a nationalism perspective, from a national security perspective, and from a climate crisis perspective, is to make sure that we are aggressively, as a gigantic national project, moving towards renewables to include nuclear, moving towards electrification. I know these are things that you support, but even as difficult as it is and as impossible as it ultimately seems, the costs of not doing it are so great that we can't contemplate it. We can't go there.
Us nationalizing our oil industry ain't going to do anything about China and India. India and China are 60-some% of overall, in terms of overall polluters. So, what are we going to do? When I'm pointing to resilience, what I'm saying is that we need, in the short term, to be able to refine the amount of gas that we need, absolutely. Even in the electric revolution, look, you need diesel. You can't, there ain't electric planes is the last time that I checked. You need jet fuel. These are all things which are dramatically expensive. And I have no confidence that a Democratic administration, given under the current one, is so constrained by the environmentalists who, look, I am a conservationist. I support that to my core. They do not support, at the end of the day, building new refineries. You have to suck it up sometimes and say, listen, I know this is bad, but right now, we are in a massive crisis.
I don't see any evidence that the Biden administration is really constrained by environmentalists, to be honest
currently,
with you,
there is no effort in order to try and expand capacity.
They've done next to nothing in terms of an actually serious climate environmentalist agenda. They've let Joe Manchin be, the head of the body, the committee in the Senate that would write the rules on all of that. So I think it's silly to imagine that AOC is controlling the environmental policy for the Democratic Party. My point is, listen, I think the Indian-China thing is kind of a cop-out.
But they literally do.
Yeah, but yes, but does that let us off the hook for trying to do anything? No, of course not. And if you look over we are overwhelmingly have contributed the most to carbon pollution of any country in the world. So to say it's not really our fault, I don't think that that's accurate, or I don't think that's fair. And I also don't think it's right to say that our actions wouldn't ultimately make a difference in terms of, okay, then you have an ability to say, here's what we're doing and put pressure. China, as you know, now has invested a lot of money in developing, battery technology and solar panels. I mean, they actually have made a concerted effort to move their economy towards a potential different future. So while I agree on the short term, I am by no means ready to say, oh, it's a dream to avoid the climate crisis, because the consequences of not doing something serious about it are just too dire to hand wave away.
Here's my concern. We're going to still have to do fuel for the next 30, 40 years. So instead what happened is the current policy, which is that we ban the ability to do anything here, and then we import it all from Asia and China. And that's what I mean by environmental racism. I mean, the solar policy is a good example. We are totally willing for Chinese kids to inhale toxic solar fumes as long as we get to hit our fake renewable targets.
Here's where I'll agree with you, is that because the policy is like piecemeal and nonsensical, you end up with basically the worst of all worlds, where you're not doing anything serious about the climate crisis and you're forcing people to pay higher prices. That's why you need someone who actually has like a long-term strategic vision and actual commitment to it, and at least one of the two parties not being completely sold out to the oil and gas industry and willing to enlist the American people in a larger scale national project that actually makes sense. Because you're 100% right, what we're doing right now makes no sense.
Thank you.
Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.